All right. So it says here we are live. I'm not sure if we are actually already live on YouTube. We are? Awesome. Cool. Amazing. Okay, so let me just check if everything is good. Okay, it says we have 3 viewers already. Amazing. Oh, I didn't even think that we get some viewers so early. All right. Cool. Then I will just wait maybe half a minute to see if a bit more people join, and then I'm gonna start. All right. Cool. Let's try this layout. Yeah, I definitely have a worse camera than you guys, but it's fine I think it's fine for the first time. Awesome. Cool. Yeah, then I would say we are starting. Thanks for everyone who is here so far. And yeah, welcome to everyone who is watching later. I'm Nick. I'm a designer and I love talking about design. And that's what we're going to do today. And today's topic is what most designers get wrong about UX research and how to actually get better at it. Because I think a lot of designers, especially juniors, they kind of forget a bit about UX research and what powerful tool it can actually be. So I actually invited 2 of my friends and also 2 experts in this area, Chris and Wyatt. And yeah, we're just talking a little bit about how you can improve. We have some guides prepared, some best practices, and yeah, just want to provide value to you guys. If you have any questions, just put it in the chat and we try to answer them after finishing some thoughts. And yeah, maybe we can even make this a bit more interactive. If not, it's also fine. I'm really happy to introduce the guys now. Yeah, let's start with Chris. Can you introduce yourself quickly?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, sorry. I was like, oh, are you gonna? Okay, I'll do it. I'm Chris. I am the founder of UX Playbook, where I help designers go from fuzziness to focus in their careers, all the way from building a first portfolio to leading a design team and everything in between. And that's a little bit about me.
Awesome.
And
I could. Yeah, sorry. Go ahead, Wyatt.
yeah, you're good. Yeah, and I'm Wyatt, founder of Rally and Doug Studios, which is, Rally is a place for designers, streamline their design QA, and also Doug Studios, which is a design agency for UX. And I've been in it for about 10 years now.
Awesome. Thanks, guys. So great to have you. We've known each other for quite some while now, and yeah, who better to bring on to my first design talk than you guys? So
Wait,
great to
Nick,
have you.
you didn't introduce yourself.
I have to, right? No, okay. Yeah, I'm Nick. I'm a product designer and I also run a small design studio. And yeah, we're just trying to make the best products possible. And for that, you need things like UX research. And yeah, that's what we're going to talk about today. So if you guys don't mind, I would love to throw in the big question, the reason why we're here. Why or what do most designers get wrong about UX research? And if you don't mind, Chris,
Sure.
is there
I'll
something you
start.
have in mind?
Yes.
Awesome.
So I think most designers get wrong about UX research is they think it's just about the user, which is absolutely BS and it's not true. So I'll put it to you that there's actually 4 types of people you need to consider. The first one is decision makers, or the ones that are internal, right? The one that gives you the green light of the project, usually like executive, senior leaders, head of product. Their approval is crucial for the project to move forward. So without their blessing, if you will, or being aligned to the goal, the project basically wouldn't exist. Okay. The second is internal stakeholders, the people who are actually directly on the project, developers, PMs, marketers, other designers, customer service, whoever those stakeholders are. They might not use the thing that you're designing, but their input is key to getting your design decisions right. The third is actually adjacent to the end users, which is your target customers. These folks don't actually have to use the product, but they actually have to buy it. Think about B2B software. The users are not necessarily the customers, right? So some underlying things to consider here is if the buyer doesn't see the value, they won't buy, right? If you make it too hard to purchase as a designer, they also won't buy. If you don't play nice with their existing product suite, if we're talking about B2B software, then they also won't buy it. And then that comes to the last thing, which is what all the designers think that UX research is, or who it's for and what it's about, is the end user. Of course, these people are very important, but it's not the only group of people we should care about, right? These people are the ones that actually use your product. You're designing for their needs, their pain points. You're conducting research tests and iterating based on their feedback. Ultimately, they are the ones, quote unquote, that determines the success or failure to some extent, because if they're not using it, then can you determine its success? But I just want to highlight that again. Most designers think it's just about the user, and I think it's not. It's internal decision makers, it's internal stakeholders, it's target customers, and then the actual end user.
So I actually love this take. As I understand, it's not just about the user. There are actually 4 different stakeholders. And do you have some advice or some tip for each individual stakeholder, like how to interview or how to tend to like internal stakeholders, or how to tend to the buyer instead of the user? Do you have some ideas for this?
Yeah, I think every project that I start, I always do stakeholder interviews instead of what we typically say user interviews, right? Just find the end user and then just ask them stuff. You actually do a much broader set of interviews, because then you're really exploring the problem space from multiple different angles. So I think that is probably my go-to, where I'm like, okay, I'll have different sets of questions based on how close they are to the project and what I expect or what I want to know from these people. For example, I am not going to ask, internal decision makers, how do you feel about this product, right? Instead, I'll ask, like, what do you want to see? What is the goal? How does it move the needle for you? Why are we doing it like this, right? Versus this other way. So I think it's all really about, one, interviewing a broad set of people that has influence over the product, and then kind of diving into each of these groups and saying, well, okay, well, how could they provide insight into this project I'm working on? And then like that simple framing will take you further, I think, than just focusing on the end user, even though they're so important. But, it doesn't exist in a vacuum, right? What we do. So like speaking to these other folks would also help a bunch of other things to do with your project, whether it's, red tape or trying to work through certain barriers to get this approved or whatever it is, right? So I think it's really, really important.
Mm-hmm. I think that's a good point. This too is like, because every single like stakeholder within the business too has different context to the product, how they've done it, how they've interacted with it, what kind of like what they're getting out of it, right? Because like if you talk to somebody in customer service or support, what they want from the product is very different from what like a PM wants from it. And so they're going to give you 2 completely different answers. And like how you speak to them, they're not going to understand the same language per se as like what you're going to be asking an engineer. And so you have to like, very much navigate the way you ask those stakeholder interviews during that process.
Yeah, absolutely. And everybody has their own goal and agenda. So like that is also important to know when you're doing this research, especially if it's like a new thing, right? A new initiative in the company, and you're like, what the hell is going on? Like, we don't know what we don't know, so let's just figure that out. It's a lot different if the product is out and you're doing like iterative stuff. Then things are more clear. You've built like nomenclature or standardized phrasing for things. But right at the beginning of something that's like relatively greenfield or blue ocean, you're like, well, we don't know, so let's just figure it out together. So yeah, I think it's one of those things that we got to have in our toolbox. Yeah.
This, like you mentioned something like how you gotta name things. This is a really common issue, especially during user research. You as a designer maybe have a name for a specific feature or a specific need, like let's call it dashboard. But then other people have different names, and you have to make sure that everyone is talking about the same thing. And this is, I would say, also quite a big challenge when you have 4 different stakeholders, as you mentioned, and try to keep them aligned about what they're talking about. I would say that's, yeah, it already goes a little bit into product management if you think about it. But I would say that the best designers already have a good grasp about what product management actually is.
Cool. Yeah, I guess I know we do a little bit of round robin. I think one of the things I would say that like you get wrong with research, right? Or like that people may not realize is that like, I actually think there's a nuance to like even understanding if you need to do research or not. And I think that's like a big piece, because I think one of the biggest misses is that people don't realize, like, a lot of the times I think designers tend to just like default that, or like hide behind like, hey, we need to do research, or hey, we need to validate this, or hey, we need to go like do usability testing, or whatever you will. But in reality, like, if you just dig into some of the problem spaces more, like a lot of times, a lot of it has already been validated. You may have enough information. The product manager may have already done all that research, like that investigative validation for you. And so like you can kind of like take that 80% of the way, run with it, and then iterate once that thing is up and launched. And so I think it's just like trying to figure out if it doesn't make sense for the situation you're in to even run research, or is it enough to do some sort of alternative like validation?
Yeah, that's right. I think this week I posted about it. Like, research is not like a one-time thing you do, and there's not like you do this process step for research, you do this process step, and then you're done. There's so many moving pieces, and I think as a designer you just have to make sure you always are like on the pulse of what you need to know to make a better product. And yeah, that's definitely a challenge. Also for me sometimes.
I think for junior folks, like, what would you guys, how would you help folks sort of frame, do they have enough research or not? Like, let's just say they don't know if they do. How do you, in your own process or in your own careers, how do you think about this problem of, hey, is there enough research? Do I need more?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. Nick, if you have something, otherwise I gotta,
Yeah, go ahead, Wyatt. Maybe
yeah,
we talk about the same thing.
Yeah. I think that for me, I generally I would suggest like asking up your stakeholders, like, where can I find relevant information that's already been documented? Or do you have like past user interviews? And just start to like investigate a little bit, like what's already domain knowledge, and if there's been past design iterations of a certain specific area that you're like supposed to be exploring. Because a lot of the times I've found that while you are a little bit unsure, like a lot of like, especially if it's a more established company, you can kind of go back and see the history of like how this feature or something has been iterated upon. And a lot of times you're like, oh, maybe I'm, trying to update, I don't know, like an onboarding piece, but you realize if you look back 3 or 4 versions from like 2 years ago, they've already kind of explored that and they really hammered it and validated a lot of that. And so you're like, okay, maybe that's something we don't need to do because of that. And so I think you can learn a lot from just like domain knowledge that. And then I think, yeah, just talking to stakeholders that have been there for a while, because they can kind of point you in the right direction of whether this stuff has been thoroughly, thought through.
Yeah, that's a good point. What I would add is, and I do this with a lot of my clients, when you say, do I have enough research already? For me, it's all about confidence. Am I confident enough that the research I have is already good enough? And the way how I do it is with design presentations. So I take together a lot of research, I interview users, and then I try to present it in a way that everybody can understand it, and just feedback it with the team or with the key decision makers of the client or of internally, and see if I can convince them that this is actually enough. If they are able to, to find opposite opinions on my arguments, if they find some holes in the research I did, then I have a better feeling about maybe it's not enough. Maybe I need to dig in a bit more. But if they are convinced, if they say, hey, yeah, that's amazing, of course we have to build this, I think then you know that you have done enough research, at least for now. And then I would personally move forward and start with other parts of the process.
I'm curious on that a little bit too. Is like from what Chris said earlier, made me think like how do you like suggest that potentially like junior designers can build up their confidence? Because I know at least for me, early on in your career, like getting any sort of confidence in anything is really tough because it's like maximum imposter syndrome. I think it's like a tough thing to overcome until you, I don't know, 3-4 years maybe even in the industry, to where you start to not feel like, you don't know what you're doing. You kind of start to hit your stride a little bit. But like, how do you have any ways that you can kind of help navigate that in the beginning?
That's a good question. Chris, do you have something about it? Otherwise, let me think about it.
I think for juniors, well, what works for me is just if I'm not that confident about something and I really want to get better at it, I just do the reps. Like it's just pain. Like it's like brute force. So in my second design job, we had to present to clients twice a week, maybe at least once a week. I sucked at presentations, hated it at uni. I just it just felt really weird. And it was like my face was red and, dry throat and all that stuff, right, of public speaking. But after being there for a few months, I could present, like I was very confident in what I was presenting. It's not that I wasn't before, but I just felt a bit better in my skin. So it's just the reps of like, if I want to get better at research and if I want to present my points clearly, then I better do a lot of reps. It doesn't mean that I have to fail in public, because I think a lot of people think that they have to do that these days. You can fail in private, you could record yourself. There's a bunch of different ways you can practice, right? But it's, I think ultimately it's just like, if you've done that so much and it's muscle memory, you will naturally come off confident. It's like practicing for a speech, like a best man speech or whatever it is. I think that's one way, brute force, but that's probably not everybody's solution. That's just mine. So confidence is kind of a very personal thing. I'm not sure if you guys have any other like tips.
So as you mentioned, of course, it reps, but like the way, even if you do it in private, the way to transform the information you've found out in UX research, the way to transform this into like a presentation, into something that you can talk to everyone about, this part alone, and even if you do it in private, will get you so far ahead in terms of speaking clearer and understanding the information yourself better, because you have to think about it, how you can present it to others. And if you do this, I usually still do it sometimes. For big presentations, I just do the presentation myself on my own and record it and see where I'm a bit off or if I'm unsure about anything. And yeah, then it's really just doing it over and over again to get this confidence. But I think if you have a plan like this, you don't have to be unconfident for like 10 years because you're gonna learn really, really fast if you do it often.
I just wanted to add something. So I went to this startup incubator 2023, and I thought I was okay at presenting. I had presented to clients every week. I would do these big presentations, done a bunch of talks. There's nothing more nervous than pitching your startup that is false, that doesn't exist, to a bunch of people that are going to give you money to go build that thing. And this is how the incubator set it up. They basically say, okay, the first day you come to the incubator, we're going to get you to pitch. The second day, you're going to pitch. The third day, you're going to pitch. And all around ideas that you've literally had 12 hours to work on. And this was like the boot camp for pitching, right? And this was 11, 12 weeks long. And that made me way more confident. And I thought I was confident already. So there's actually never such thing as enough reps. You can always get better at this thing called communication, or whatever is the thing that you want to get better at, right? And like that was such an insightful lesson I had to relearn when I was there, because I mean, there was a guy from Google that was a business development person, so his sales skills was like top notch, and I was like, I want to be as good as that guy, right? Like it was just, that was just a personal thing, but like the reps really do matter, and high pressure situations kind of bring that out of you.
Yep. I think, same thing for me. It's like reps. You just got to you just learn as you go. And I don't know that there's like anything that beats learning as you go, and just like, honestly, trial by fire, throw into it, figure it out and see what you're made of. Like some people are really good at it and like seem like they've been at it for years when they're just tossed into the fire and have to figure it out as they go. And some people like fumble, and that's part of the process. And I think that is the best learning experience. It's funny you said that pitching thing, because I talked with a founder not too long ago who finished up with YC, and they introed them essentially to 180 investors right out the gate. And they had a meeting with every single one. And their thing was like, he basically said, like, I had when you have those days that are back-to-back meetings, 30 minutes a piece. He's like, it was that for 8 hours a day, basically for 3 months straight. And I had the other co-founders bringing me lunch because it was just so slammed, because they just booked all the meetings for him, like the YC group. And it's crazy.
Yeah. Did he raise funds? Like,
they ended up getting funding and got it all closed, but he was just like, it was the craziest thing ever, that it was like, that much of just a gauntlet. So
well done.
Yeah.
It's so funny. I was also in a accelerator for startups, and they of course talk a lot about pitching, but in the end you actually don't do a lot of like real pitching, but you have to sell your startup or your idea every day, all the time. So you have to get natural at the pitch. You basically have to know the whole pitch deck in and out, even if you don't have it. But like this setting, hey, I'm going on a call, I will present my slides for 10 minutes and then ask for some money. I think it gets less and less important, and just the way you talk about your startup or your idea all the time gets more and more important. But to go back to the original question, I was wondering, Wyatt, if you have another point that most UX designers or most designers get wrong about research.
Oh man. I think that my other one is just that, like, does it need to be validated even? Like, is it big enough of a actual design fix where you need to validate it at all? Or can you just say, if this isn't the perfect solution, who cares? And I think that's like a big one that I have really, and maybe that just comes from the confidence thing that we talked about a little bit ago, but I have found myself, the more and more I've gotten into it, the more and more that I just kind of do it based on intuition, because I'm like, I think I even saw something, I don't know how you pronounce the last name, Tommy Gyoko, or say something where he just had like some series of welcome to UX decisions that really don't fucking matter. And it was like, there's so many of those. And I think I've started to realize that more and more. That's just, and that's kind of one of the, I think research ones is like, is it really matter?
That's I love it, because if you really want, you can spend like months doing research and trying to find out more and more and more. But eventually, you have to get started, and yeah, that's a lovely point. Chris?
Yeah. So okay, so a lot of, or what most designers get wrong about UX research is they think they need permission. Not true. Like, you don't need to ask anybody to research. You don't need to be like, can I allocate 20% of my capacity to research? It's just like, if you want to find out the answer, why can't you? And why do you need your manager's permission?
I have one
Maybe
caveat
it could be,
to that, but yeah.
Yeah. Maybe it could be like, if you're, working with a client and you don't want to overextend yourself, or you've got, that could be a possibility. But I think that, well, the comments that I get asked is like, where can I fit in research? And I think it goes back to your point, Wyatt, which is like, yeah, like, one, why do you need it? Is it important? Is it validated? Where can you find the information from? And two is like, well, if it isn't, then why can't you go seek the answer yourself? Like, why do you need someone to say, oh, you need to do this, right? And I think this is that, like, think like a founder mentality, or just proactivity in one's career, where you're just like, okay, well, if I don't know the answer, and I'm not confident, to Nik's point, then I'm just going to go like figure it out, like try to get enough confidence for me to move forward, right? And I think a lot of designers kind of get strung up, maybe because it's the corporate ladder, maybe they don't have enough proactivity or whatever, or initiative, and they're like, no, I need to tell, like, someone needs to tell me that I can research, therefore I want to research, but I'm not telling them I want to like all this, like, endless loop, right? Whatever it is. Mm-hmm.
Yep. Yeah. I think that's a great point. And one thing that made me think of is the only edge case, I think, where like you do have to get permission, because I ran into this and I'd never had my entire career until probably the last time I was as a role. There was like this weird, and maybe it's the company, weird relationship between, they didn't want you to reach out to specific businesses or companies because they didn't want, unless it was approved, because they didn't want, the account managers didn't want to run the risk of tarnishing relationships from the designers talking to them and doing that. And so like, it was like such a weird thing, because I was like, well, it was taking so long to hear back from certain people that I wanted to talk with. And so I was like, can I just take this into my own hands and just start reaching out? And so we had to go through a process of like getting a whole list of basically businesses approved that I could reach out to at any point in time, which took time. But that was like a weird caveat, which, like, yeah, technically you could just go do it, which was kind of my train of thought. But, to nurture relationships internally within stakeholders, it was kind of like, that was kind of the weird permission thing that I had to face at one point in time.
Yeah, I think exactly. There's always going to be edge cases of like sensitive data, whether it's like doctor and patients, if you're in the government, if you're like defense tech, like there are these like red tape for real good reasons. I'm just saying, probably 95% of designers just go do it. Like, just ask AI. Just go like it's not life or death. You're not building like deep tech stuff that you need to ask the monkey's permission to probe the brain. You're not doing that. Okay. So just there is the answer out there. You just need to find it, and it's more of a mindset. I think that's healthy to sort of drill in.
To maybe follow up with a question about this topic, maybe to both of you. How do you actually, especially as a junior, how do you make your managers or your clients aware that UX research is important, and how can you present the value to them before you actually start doing the work?
I could take this. Yeah. So you could scare the crap out of them. That's one way. Here are all the risks. You're risking this, 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 and this, right? Or you could say it in a different way, which is like, here's the trade-offs we're going to make if we don't move forward with X, Y, and Z. Is that okay? Is that baked into the scope? Like, there's a bunch of things you can do. So I think Emily Anderson talks a lot about risk. She's a designer, and she just recently started her own company, design studio, but she speaks a lot about this topic. Like there's always risks with the unknown unknowns, right? Or even the known unknowns. So it's really about highlighting, well, what are they, or what is the potential knock-on effects? And then if you can map that to customer satisfaction, if you can map that to revenue, if you can map that to saving costs, anything that the people that you're speaking to cares about, and you can be like, have you thought about this? What do we do if we eventually come up to that? And maybe it's just like, we just can't care about this, right? So like, that's potentially how you could pitch it. But yeah, I guess that's the first thing that came to my head.
Yeah, I like your point, because that's basically one of the first things I like to mention when I talk about UX research. It's the risk of losing a lot of time, and time for startups especially is the most important thing. And I usually say things like, you can give me 2 weeks to investigate this topic, and then we might save 2 months of developing the wrong feature. So what do you think is worth more, or which risk is higher? So then usually I get the 2 weeks to do the research. Of course, there's no guarantee that we actually find out what we should build, but the confidence, and that's again the key word here, increases by a lot. And if we find out that maybe this is not even the right product for this type of user, damn, we saved a lot of money and time there, just from like 2 or 3 weeks of research.
I think that's a great tip. I think one other one, just kind of on top of that, is that I found, especially like this, probably like specifically in startups, is like, if you can basically say like, have that conversation with your manager, or, your director or CTO or whatever kind of, person that is the one that approves that stuff, is like, I always found that you say, hey, I want to run research. It's important because we want to find out more, but I don't want that to slow us down. So let's continue with the design choices and methods and everything that we've kind of talked about. But in tandem, let's run user research in that problem space. And as while we're going along in parallel, if we find something that's really paramount and interesting, we can kind of pivot what we're doing on what we're moving forward with. That way, if we waste some time, it's only a little bit, it's not the maximum amount. And then you just kind of keep moving forward in tandem. And I've always found that like, that's a pretty easy sell, is like, if you kind of do those in tandem, then it kind of, it's like a normal cycle. You got to iterate a little bit or work backwards or that kind of thing. But that tends to kind of be a softer sell to those people of, decision making.
Definitely.
Yeah, that's a really good one, because you're not saying, hey, I'm going to stop all my work and just do this thing on the side that you don't care about. I'm actually going to do the work, and on top of that, we're going to we're going to explore, so the work that we do is actually going to get better. So that's a great one.
Yeah. Just as a quick reminder to the 7 people that are live, if you have any questions about what we talked about, or any other questions about user research, just drop it in the comments, and we will see we'll try to get all of them to answer. All right. So one topic I would also like to share, and maybe even you have some questions about it. Something I noticed very early on, and when I did this wrong in the beginning of my career a lot, I was always way too biased when I went into user research. Like, I got a new project about, we need to develop this football betting app because people love football betting. And then I go into user interviews and I ask them, hey, do you also love football betting? And like, it is an extreme example, but we tend to be super biased about what a potential solution could be, that we forget about listening to the actual problems. And I created like a free interview script, and one section there is like the green flags to listen out for and the red flags to listen out for. And some of the red flags are actually that how do you say it? If people say, yeah, of course, I would love to have this feature or that feature. First of all, it's probably not the right thing to say, hey, if we've built feature A, would you use it? But second of all, you don't really want to hear that they would use it, because first of all, they say it because they're polite, but probably they will not use it, and most of the time they don't even care about it in the first place. So this is one of the red flags. Another one is also if they give very vague problems that they have. For instance, yeah, all the other sports betting apps are bad. You like, if you write this down and bring this to your team, it doesn't really help. And on the other side, there are a few green flags that you can listen out for. One of them is that you give very specific examples, or that the user gives very specific examples of when something happened that they didn't like, or how they used the software in this very specific case. For instance, last time I did sports betting. I probably should have picked a different example, but last time I did this happened and I really didn't like it. Another green flag is when they actually say that they paid money for something. Like, I paid $5 for this specific feature and it still didn't solve my problem. That is a green flag, because it shows you that they weren't even afraid of spending money to solve the problem, and maybe, or probably, you can do it better. And this being unbiased is one thing that I did wrong in the beginning a lot, and I think a lot of designers, if they think about it before starting research, they could get so much better results. Do you guys have any experience with like being biased, or have you heard this in questions of other designers when talking to them?
Yeah, I think definitely, like in the beginning, especially when you're running research, you tend to ask a lot of leading questions because you want to get to the answers as fast as you can. And it's like a muscle you have to develop, because you start to realize, like, oh, if I ask them this question, I'm pretty sure I'm going to get the answers that I want. And then that'll support it. And then we build the feature that I want because it supports it. And but you don't realize you're doing that in the beginning. It's like even the thing with, first time founders are like, if we build this product, will you use it? Who's not going to say yes, right? It's not really a telling sign of whether that is actually true. It's like, you have to ask and infer and do that kind of thing. So I think that is very, very true when it comes to like research around that. And then one other thing that you made me think with the green flags thing is another nugget that sometimes it's like you can find out is like, understand, are they doing any workarounds within the product that are not intended to reach that outcome that they're wanting to achieve because your product doesn't solve it? And you might be surprised like how often that actually happens, or maybe not. Maybe your product does fit it all, but like look for those kinds of things in organic conversations to see if you can pull out those little nuggets.
So do you think solving the problem of being biased in research is just better questions, or at least that's a starting point?
It's two things. It's the mindset about what UX research is actually doing. It should uncover problems and not helping you designing the thing that you wanted to design in the first place. Because it might look good and you might look awesome as a designer in the first place, but people will recognize that, the design doesn't really hit the mark eventually. So it's really a mindset thing. And the second thing is, as you mentioned, the questions. So the kind of questions you ask really play a huge role in the answers you actually get. I would even say if you have a killer question, you will get like one question that's just amazing. You will get all the information that you need. Because I had interviews where I was like, I have a few warm-up questions, for instance, and I want to just get people starting to talk during user interviews, get comfortable talking. And then there's usually one killer question, and they just share everything that they care about and the problems that they have. And I'm sitting there and just writing my notes and making sure I get everything right. So it's definitely the questions, but also the mindset before what tool actually UX research is.
It's definitely the intentional, being very intentional with the questions that you ask and what you're trying to get out of them, for sure, is like a huge part of that. And the other piece of that is like understanding, I think, before you go into research, like understanding their emotions, how they navigate the product, like doing a great understanding of how they exist today, so you know how to prompt those questions and get the most out of it. Because if you just know it generically, like, hey, it's like, females 24 to 30 that are into health and fitness, like that's not enough to go off of and really extract insights from. But if you understand more of their emotional makeup, then like it helps with some of that prompting and being less biased towards things.
One follow-up question here. Would you guys ever be comfortable to delegate your research to AI? Like you don't write it, like you're trying to be as non-biased as possible, but delegate the question, the prompting, and just to AI. Is that a future you see happening?
Wyatt, if you want,
I guess like I think I'd be comfortable at this point, like with it writing the questions, if you prompt to give it enough information and helping to do that, and you fine tune a little bit. I think if you train it on enough data, yes, I think it would be okay enough to like do interviews, to ask the right questions if you prompted it with enough data. And honestly, it'd probably ask better questions than like 60%, 70% of designers out there. Because not everybody's good at user research. Like that is very, very true. And it's very paramount when you get on a call with somebody or watch them and you're like, wow, that, we didn't get what we wanted out of that. So I think yes. But I don't know 100% on finding the nuances in things like the workarounds, like we just talked about, or, things of that sort. I think that I don't know that I would ever trust, because there is a certain side of like, I don't know if it would understand, it wouldn't be able to notice like the facial expression nuances, or like the frustration points, or like, I don't know that it would get to that level where I would trust the like, the little tweaks that you catch up when somebody gets excited when you show them something in that exact moment, versus like the fake excitement. They're like, oh yeah, kind of, like, I don't know if it would pick up that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
It's such a great point. Like, as you mentioned, it's not just about the words they're saying. It's about what facial expressions they have, how they say things. And also, I mean, that's a bit harder when you do it online, the interview, but also what are they doing with their hands? If you show them a prototype, where are they actually clicking? Those are things that AI will be able to do in the future, but not now. And another crucial thing that why I think it's not there yet, and I would not AI do my user interviews yet, is because the real interesting thing is in follow-up questions. And those follow-up questions, you have to have a lot of, I would say, emotional intelligence to understand in which topics you want to dive deeper. And sometimes I would say like the top 5% of interviewers or designers, they know exactly when to dive deep into a topic and when to stay out of it, especially when you have to go off script. Like a script with like a few questions is fine, but the follow-up questions, those are the juicy, the interesting things. And that's where I think AI will still take probably at least a year or two to get there.
So guys, if you're looking to get better at user research, there is no workaround with the AI. You should get your hands as dirty as possible, then know what you're looking for when you pick a research tool, right? Because the tool will have different capabilities and all this stuff. So you should actually speak to humans. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's you definitely should use AI to get an idea of how to structure an interview, how to some basic questions, like maybe how to get people going. But I would say even now it's a bit harder to understand, or to, I guess it comes down to prompting. Like, how do you, if you don't know what you want to find out as an interviewer, how can you tell AI to do it? But yeah, as you mentioned, AI definitely, just by using it for like simple things, for structure and stuff, it will get you ahead already.
100%. I also think, like, in some of those interviews and other things, just like a little tip that I have found is, like, the more natural and conversational that you can make them feel, the better insights you'll get. If it just sounds like you're reading off a script and you're just going down your questions, like, the worse outcome sometimes that you get is, and the less comfortable that the person you're interviewing feels. But if you kind of just start and you can kind of guide, ask questions, follow-up questions, like you guys are saying, like, then that's where like the magic happens.
There's something interesting I saw, and I'm not afraid to go a bit off topic here, but I also, for me personally, I sometimes really tell AI personal stuff about me, or like I want to have a solution to my problems. So I can imagine a world where people just type and talk to an AI and just share their problems with a specific software. And I can see a world where it even gets better insights than from a human, because they're not afraid to speak their mind, to actually tell them about the solutions. Did you see anything like this, or do you have experiences with that?
I haven't personally, but I'm sure that it's there. If not, I don't know. I always see on YouTube BetterHelp, and I'm sure they're heading down that path with like AI therapists, like, which I'm sure is going to be a very big thing. And someday it'll probably just be like in an autonomized robot that's just sitting with you in your office when you're, feeling depressed and you just want to talk to somebody, right? Like, it'll just be there and feel like your buddy.
Yeah, imagine a future where you don't even need to interview users because everybody has a personal AI that knows everything about them. So you'll just get an aggregate of your demographic that your AI could speak to when you're building the product. So you can immediately call the API and the answers will be there based on the parameters you define. That would be super weird. I mean, it would help, but it would just be really weird that it could just instantly tell you a bunch of things.
I had this thought, like, on that train a little bit, is like, do you think we'll get into a world where, because AI knows so much about you and the way you browse the web and do the things, that like eventually they will get to a point where like websites will not be a static one to the type of like a static, this is the positioning to a specific type of user, but it's going to be dynamic no matter what page you navigate to, it will change. What one person sees is going to be kind of like unique to them, like an IP address, and it's going to change, and it's going to be dynamic, and it'll show, and it's going to convert significantly higher than we'll ever have seen before.
100%. I think the browser company is already trying to redefine the browser. So instead of just a web browser, right? Like, that's how we browse stuff on the internet. They're trying to make Dia, which is like, I guess it's like a cursor, or it's like the thing that you click on, and that to be the browsing mechanism. So I think for software is going to be fluid. Like, all operating system software, like, we don't have this. I don't think there'll be a concept of apps. I think it's just to be a series of APIs, and then information will just be displayed in some sort of fluid software context. And the lines between the browser, apps, native, like whatever it is, everything will just be like conjoined and to your preference, hopefully. And that's a exciting sort of future, because if you think about how that would look or work or feel, it's just kind of mind-blowing.
It's like a Siri, but really good.
Like really good.
I think you just meant good.
Yeah. Yeah. No, but like with Siri, what you would wish it can do is basically any task, like book flights, tell your mother that you forgot to do the dishes again. or find out any information possible. And I think, yeah, as you mentioned, like Arc, the browser company, is trying to do that with Dia. There's like this company who failed, unfortunately, but they're like the humane pin, where you just talk into it and it does everything for you. That's probably the future of user interfaces. And even good user interfaces nowadays already tend to, like, they personalize even more and more, like not just the name, but also what do you show, what preferences did they select first. So we are already like trying, even without AI, getting to even more personal interfaces. And yeah, AI is just gonna accelerate that even more.
Yeah, and to take that a step further, like with agents and MCPs and stuff, like things that do for you, but I think it has to be multimodal, right? Like you're not just going to look at a screen, you're going to, flick your wrist, you're going to whatever, right? Like touch on this surface, that surface. So yeah, it's just like super exciting in terms of technology and what that evolves to. For the sci-fi fans out there, I'm sure all of us are, there's just so many movies that you could reference, like, oh, generative game in Her, or whatever movie you want to quote, right? It's just kind of strange where we're seeing like this bubbling up to potentially a reality with all this like AI talk coming out.
Yeah, that's well said. Well said. All right, so we were aiming for about an hour, and I'm really amazed that we're already at like 50 minutes. So before we actually get to the end, I would love to know from each one of you guys, if you have, especially for junior designers, if you have like one very practical tip or advice that you can give them when it comes to user research. Can be super niche or like a broad tip, but if you have like one that you would give away for free today, what would it be?
I mean, I guess I'll start. The first one that came to mind was volunteer to do moderated research anytime you can in the beginning, because it's just like you got to get the reps in and you'll get better. And then for me in the beginning, it was very uncomfortable and I hated, like I always would avoid it and would like hopefully somebody else would volunteer. But then I realized after doing it about 25 times, like it's not that bad. And it's just talking to people. So I would say just like volunteer as much as you can, and and then find a way to alternate during those sessions with like a senior designer so that you have that little bit of break, but you can observe how they do it. So sit in on a lot of studies and volunteer to do them when you can.
Yeah, that's a great tip.
Awesome.
I think if we were talking about better research is a function of mindset and better questions, then I think we need to go down the question route where we say, okay, well, I'm not just going to ask one type of question. I'm going to ask a bunch, right? Everybody knows the 5 W's, 1 H, which is who, what, when, where, why, and how. So explore that in terms of questioning. There's no like one type of question that would get you to where you want to go. And then I think the follow-up to that is like, yeah, you should ask questions, you should be curious, but know that there's never a definitive answer, ever, right? You never know for certain, will it work, won't it work, right? Sometimes it's just about moving in, like knowing enough to move forward, because there's always going to be constraints, no time, no money, or both. So in my opinion, actually the best research, and this you can quote me on this, the best research is to actually get it in the hands of the people, a real working version, no matter how crappy. So like simulated simulated environments, like an offline user test, is not the same as me using the app when I'm on the go. Like it's never the same as using it in the wild. So I think as a designer that owns research, it's never been sort of easier to ship something, right? And I think whether or not it works in the wild is the only definitive answer, or the closest to the definitive answer that you're ever going to get. Everything before that can be noise, right? Not to say you shouldn't research, but like you should try to race to the finish line and then backfill the data and then keep on going that loop. And yeah, like for me, I think that was one of the biggest things that I learned. And hopefully folks can take that to heart and just like try to get it out the door and then figure it out later.
Awesome. Thanks for sharing. I have a practical tip and I have a theoretical tip. Like, if you are a designer and you already have a software, one thing that hugely increases the amount and the quality of feedback you get, and it also plays into this thing that Chris mentioned, like you want to get feedback from people actually using it, from like a real environment. If you in your software have a place where you can put very obviously, or I mean at least at the side, not too big, but somewhere in the main screen, like a field where people can just type in, hey, this feature sucked because I couldn't use this, or maybe I found a bug here, and then they just click send without entering email or without entering any additional information, you will get way more feedback, of course, but also the quality is way better because you get feedback exactly when they are frustrated. And tools like, for instance, Amy Calendar, and also when Notion Mail launched, I used the feature for Notion Mail about feedback like at least twice a day, because in the beginning it was a bit buggy, and I tried to mention that, and they even replied like in the same day. And this is like such a low effort feature, but it will hugely increase your user research and the feedback you get. And the theoretical part is, it plays a bit into what Wyatt was saying. Just get started. And how I would get started is interview one user, prepare one presentation, and try to argue once, or first time ever, try to argue what you found out during this interview and why does it matter. And this will not only, of course, gives you the main touch points for everything you need on later, but this will also teach you that you already think ahead in the sense of what do I need to find out to get more confident. So just with those 3 steps, very, very easy, do the first thing for each of those 3 steps. And I think you're golden.
Yeah. And then I guess one little bonus thing that I just thought of that I've used kind of as a tool is if jobs to be done framework. If you've never done that, that's a great way to extract and get better questions and better outcomes, because you're basically just looking at what's the situation that they're in, what's the motivation behind it, and then what's the expected outcome that they're trying to get. And so, yeah, go investigate that more. But yeah, that's a good tip.
If you don't mind, because we can take a bit more time here. If you don't mind, just what is the jobs to be done framework, and is there like an easy way to explain what it does?
Yeah, so the basic premise around, if I remember correctly, around the jobs to be framework is you're basically trying to understand their journey from where they were at when they adopted a solution, and then what they're trying to get out of that outcome. And it's so you way of understanding their journey from like problem pain point through what kind of other potential products they've used, and then now how have they reached like where they're at today, so you can figure out how your product or solution fits into that overall customer like journey within their frame of thinking, if I remember correctly. But that's kind of how I remember that.
Awesome.
Yeah, I just want to double click on, it's kind of a little bit different from user stories, where user stories like this type of person needs to perform something else, where here you're really hyper focused on the task and the outcome. And so there's some debate on like, do user stories even matter, or are jobs to be done much more objective, right? So I think folks should kind of write both and see which one is actually more valuable in terms of educating the decision they want to make. I mean, user stories, clearly it's a framework that developers use, so it's good to talk to them about that, but like have both. And I found jobs to be done also more helpful when you want to hyper target on the thing they want to do and the outcome. Sometimes user stories, if written poorly, and they are written poorly, are just like super fluffy. You're like, there's too many assumptions in this, and you're like, I don't know why that's the case, right? Sometimes, especially around edge cases, but I could probably go on about that for a while.
Yeah, that's why you don't write like a user story once, but you write it to remember it, and you try to improve it, and sometime you actually have a good user story that the whole team can use. All right. Yeah, awesome. I really had a lot of fun talking to you guys. Chris, is there anything you wanted to share?
Yeah, to end, LinkedIn, uxplaybook.org, that find me and my stuff there. But that's about it. If you guys are into stuff like this, I also do a couple of lives a month. So check out the YouTube. And yeah, just you'll find me on the interwebs somewhere.
Cool.
Wyatt, do you have something to share?
Yeah. Find me on LinkedIn, just at Wyatt Feaster. Also on YouTube, been documenting Journey a little bit more on there. And then if you are, looking to make your design QA process suck less, like so many designers have, then just visit rally.co. Beta is going up, I think, next week. So
awesome.
Exciting.
And this is me totally being biased here, but the live streams of Chris, they are usually packed with 10 times more information than what we talked about today. So definitely check them out. And for Wyatt, I really love how, I would say different, but I really like how you do your YouTube videos, because currently you're also not only sharing about design, but also how you actually design at your startup right now and how you're trying to build it. So if you guys want to check that out, yeah, you definitely should. So we have 4 viewers. If there's any question you guys have, now is the time to put it in a chat. If not, we will end the stream now. And yeah, I had really, really fun here, and I think I should do this more often, because I learned so much today just from 1 hour talking to you guys. All right, awesome. Then thanks for being here, and yeah, I wish you a good day and good night, whatever time it is. All right, bye guys. Thanks for everyone for watching.